Hey guys, what's up? Freedom Uninterrupted here. Uh, so this is my first foray into the YouTube. For those of you that know me from the podcast, we have decided to transition into some YouTube as well. Also have a blog coming out, so stay tuned for that. But I want to get into this article that is floating around the interwebs right now, and I just words cannot describe. So let's dive into it. I accidentally slept with a Donald Trump supporter. Now, of course, this is no surprise that this is coming to us from the Toronto Life webzine. Uh, so let's dive into this. This was written by 27-year-old Diana, a bartender in presumably San Diego. Here's a picture of her, assuming this is her actual face. So, my name is Diana. I'm a 27-year-old bartender. I met this guy on Tinder about 2 months ago, a few days after I'd moved from Toronto to San Diego. We'd been chatting for all of the day, and we agreed to meet at a bar in downtown San Diego. We were just going to play Big Buck Hunter and have some drinks. It was very short notice. We didn't even exchange phone numbers. So, a couple observations about Diana. Uh, Apparently, Diana has never heard of stranger danger. Now, I understand in this world of online dating and instant communication with strangers that, we can meet anybody. I mean, we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of meeting somebody off the Tinder and, uh, meeting them within a day. But Diana seems to be, I'm not sure how I feel about Diana at this point. Her nails bother me, though. I mean, look at that. Look at the points on those things. So, the article continues. He showed up at the bar and he was super handsome, like really tall, 6'4", something absurd. Okay, so obviously she's gonna sleep with him if he's 6'4". I mean, come on. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you, Diana? Can we think of any reasons why you wouldn't? We were wearing matching leather jackets. His Triumph Bonneville was parked outside. This guy looked badass. Okay, Diana, so you got the make and model of his motorcycle, but in the conversations that you had, you never got around to finding out what his political viewpoints were? Really? What did you guys talk about? I'd be interested to hear the article of what Diana and the Trump supporter talked about. I'm genuinely curious. How do you get the make and model of somebody's motorcycle and not find out what their political views are? I mean, it's been a while since I've been on a date, but when I've been on dates in the past, if I'm on my Harley, one of the first things out of my mouth is, "Oh, I rode my Harley here," followed by, um, "By the way, what do you think of Trump?" Or "What do you think of this?" Or "What do you think of that?" So, anyway, so we had a couple drinks and played a bit of Buck Hunter. A few things came up as we were getting to know each other. I was probing a bit because I knew he was from Texas, and I wanted to find out if he was a Republican or a bad person. Not that the two are necessarily one and the same. Really, really. Because the title of the article in and of itself leads me to believe that you think they are one and the same, Diana. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears to me that you have preconceived notions about Republicans. All right, let's continue. It turned out he was pro-choice and an atheist, which was good. We disagreed on gun control because he'd served in the Marines. San Diego is a big military town, so there are a lot of those types of people around. What do you mean by those types of people? I'm curious. But the night progressed. We went to some other bars and had some more drinks, and he invited me back to his place. I was super excited because I was really into this guy. We hooked up and it was incredible. There was a lot of face touching and intense eye contact. You lost me at face touching. He was cool as hell. I was completely smitten. Now, couple things. So, Diana so far strikes me as the type to claim rape from a scenario like this. So, I'll be very interested to see if this guy doesn't have a rape accusation coming his way in the next, I don't know, few months. Anyway, also, so she finds out he's from Texas. she finds out he served in the Marines. Now, being from Texas and being in the military don't inherently mean that you're going to lean one way politically. But Diana, use some common sense and take into consideration the things that he's saying, how he's carrying himself. Uh, if you're playing big buck hunter at a bar with a guy from Texas on a motorcycle who was in the Marines, who uh, you disagree with on gun control, although being pro-choice and an atheist, take into consideration what he might believe politically. And the thing that baffles me is how can all of this come up and it never crosses your mind to ask him, does he support Trump? I mean, in the dates that I've been on where politics have come up, one of my first questions is, who do you like in the election? At least this year. Now, this was earlier this year, mind you, when Feel the Burn was still in. But it still comes up. So how does this not come up at any point? So you get invited back to his place. Well, of course you're excited. Of course you're excited. Come on. Come on, we know you, Diana. We know you're riding the cock carousel. Let's be realistic. You're a 27-year-old bartender. Now, in 2 years, you're probably going to be off the cock carousel. So you're coming to the end of your carousel ride. But for right now, you're still on the cock carousel. You're not looking for anything serious. You might be looking for a man to support you if he stumbles into your lap, but not really actively looking. So at some point, I got up and sauntered over to his bookcase because I wanted to see what he was into. Again, how was this not gathered at the bar during the conversation about politics? I saw a few photos and then a David Sedaris book that I love. I asked him about the Sedaris book and he said he hadn't read it yet. But then, right beside it, I saw a book about Donald Trump. It wasn't The Art of the Deal or one of his How to Succeed in Business books. It was In Trump We Trust by Ann Coulter. So I asked him about it. I was like, haha, this is funny. Really? So, again, you're jumping to some conclusions based upon the books on somebody's bookshelf. Personally, I have a copy of both the Quran and the Satanic Bible on my bookshelf. Does this mean that I'm a satanic Muslim? No, it does not. Anyway, this is beside the point. So let's keep going. Let's keep going through this. and he responded, "Well, actually, the guy raises some valid points. Mexicans are taking our jobs. Meanwhile, I'm a Canadian expat who just moved to America." I pointed that out, and he went, no, it's different. Why? Because I'm white and in my 20s? We started talking disparagingly about Black Lives Matter. This entire conversation happened in 5 minutes while I was frantically getting dressed to leave. I wasn't there to argue, and I felt deeply uncomfortable. So, he's got a point. Mexicans are taking our jobs. Primarily, they're taking our lower wage jobs that, frankly, most Americans don't want to do, especially farm work. You know, I grew up in a small town. I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but for those of you out on the YouTubes, I grew up in a small town, and I did a lot of farm work growing up. Still go back from time to time and help out where I'm needed. But a problem that a lot of the farmers are running into is that they can't get good field hands outside of the Mexicans. They don't want to hire the Mexicans. They want the gringos, but none of the gringos want to do the work. So, yes, Mexicans are taking our jobs, but I've said this before, and I know some of you Trump supporters out there, and don't get me wrong, I'm a Trump supporter myself, but I know some of you Trump supporters out there will disagree with me that they're only taking jobs that Americans don't want to do. Which, for the pay, I'm probably right. For the pay, if it's under the table, I'm probably right. Well, Diana, being a Canadian doesn't mean anything. Just because you're a snow Mexican doesn't mean that he's looking at you like he would be an illegal Mexican immigrant. Presumably, you came across the border legally, although I don't know how you made it through customs. They should have rejected you. How did you get into this country, Diana? I thought people like you were leaving in droves after the election. I guess not. Again, here you are bringing race and age into it. Well, the race doesn't matter. I mean, it does, but being Mexican isn't a race, it's a nationality, so there's a difference there. Uh, Talking disparagingly against Black Lives Matter, well, we all know what Black Lives Matter is doing. I personally am of the viewpoint that it is a domestic terrorist organization and should be treated the same as ISIS and Al Qaeda. What other quote unquote peaceful organization goes to cities, starts riots, burns trash cans, police cars, executes looting? It's not in the media, but there are Black Lives Matter supporters and members out there basically executing police officers. Now tell me how that isn't a domestic terrorist organization. So for this guy to talk disparagingly about Black Lives Matter is not a problem, Diana. It's a problem to you because it doesn't sit well with your echo chamber. You're frantically getting dressed to leave. Well, Diana, have you ever considered that he wanted you to frantically get dressed and leave anyway? From what I've read in this article so far, you sound like an annoying cunt. You sound like somebody that I couldn't talk to for more than 30 seconds. I wouldn't want to order coffee from you, Diana. You sound like an annoying cunt. You sound condescending. You sound narcissistic. And frankly, Diana, you probably did him a favor by running out. I got a lift home and I thought I was done with him. The next day he messaged me on Tinder. He said, "Hope you're not still upset about politics, LOL." I explained that it's hard for me to remain attracted to someone whose views are so different from mine, who believes in bigotry and xenophobia, which sucked because the sex was amazing. Then he said, "Not accepting of other people's beliefs is the definition of bigotry. So apparently it was my fault." Well, yes, Diana, it was your fault. You are the one who claims to be open-minded, yet can't. And this is not an uncommon thing from the liberals, mind you. This is a card the leftists and liberals have been playing for years, claiming open-mindedness, but as soon as somebody offers an opinion that challenges their opinions, that mind closes up faster than a nun's legs. As far as the sex being amazing goes, well, they do sell Symbian machines, and I imagine you probably have a trust fund back home, so you might want to look into that. He sent me a hey message a week later, which I never replied to. Well, of course, Diana, why would you do anything but ghost him? Now, I've spent a lot of time ripping on Diana here. I want to rip on the guy for a second, though, who shall not be named. So, first mistake this guy made was sending her a message the next day. That's the first mistake. She is very close-minded and a narcissistic cunt. But just because this guy was attracted to her, maybe he had fun. I don't know. We haven't heard a word from the guy. But first mistake this guy makes is messaging her the next day. To be honest, he probably could have taken her for a ride again if he had just ignored her. Because what is the one thing women hate more, or hate most in the world? It's being ignored. So I guarantee you, had he ignored her, she would have come crawling back to him for round 2, round 3. The problem, though, for this guy, and this is where I'm going to get into the MGTOW a little bit, is that by messaging her the next day, he very quickly transitioned the power over to her. She was the one that stormed out. She was the one that, had he not sent her a message, uh, he had some power in this situation. But by sending her the message the next day, he's now handed over almost all of the power back to her. And by sending her a message a week later, the power is completely hers. She thinks she owns this guy. I guarantee you that's part of the story that she's telling her friends, or maybe she's not, but she's thinking, I own this guy. This guy will come crawling back to me the second I call. Maybe not now, now that he's been made a fool across the internet, thanks to Diana and the Toronto Life publication. But let's finish this up, because I can't. I'm reaching the end of my tolerance here. I couldn't do it again. It feels taboo to sleep with a Trump supporter. But here's the thing. I've slept with a ton of people in my life. Of course you have, Diana. Of course. Like I said, cock carousel. This guy ranked in the top 5. I thought maybe I'd try him again one night at 3 a.m. when I was drunk enough to overlook his political views, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. See, that right there, I called it. She thinks she has the power because she thinks that she can call him drunkenly at 3 a.m. and get a quickie. She believes that she has the power. And this goes back to the point I was making about narcissistic cunt. This bitch is so full of herself that she thinks this guy is going to be at her beck and call at 3 in the morning. My guess, based upon what I've heard, this guy probably has a job. He's probably not out drinking at 3 a.m. And Diana, based upon the little bit I know about you, I suspect your 3 a.m. drinking happens on Tuesday nights. Now, we've all been there. We've all gone out late on a weeknight. But Diana, I guarantee you this is a more than weekly occurrence for you. This is probably not a rare occurrence. This is probably a normality for you. So, she couldn't bring herself to do it. Well, this guy dodged a bullet there. I don't want to wake up next to a guy who blames Mexicans for his woes and thinks bigly is a word, no matter how handsome he is. Well, I've never heard of bigly. So, no comment there. But, Diana, to your point, I suppose I wouldn't want to wake up next to a guy who thinks that bigly is a word either. Not that I'd wake up next to a guy, but I don't know what bigly means. But if he blames Mexicans for our problems, well, it sounds like he's got an okay head on his shoulders. Now, if he blames Mexicans for all of our problems, which it didn't sound like he did, maybe he's not the smartest, sharpest tool in the drawer, sharpest knife in the block. I don't know that idiom. I actually don't know that idiom off the top of my head. I don't use it much. Brightest bulb in the box. That's what I'm looking for. Brightest bulb in the box. Now, but Diana, it sounds like you went out and had a nice time with this guy. It sounds like you enjoyed his company, and until you found out who he supported in the election, you wanted to keep him around. Now, again, I cannot emphasize how much of a bullet this guy dodged by you behaving in this manner. But at the end of the day, you are still a narcissistic cunt. This guy was nothing more but another ride on the cock carousel for you. And I'm sure, I don't know the date on this article. It was several weeks ago, I know that. But I'm sure this guy is long gone in your mind. I'm sure this guy doesn't even cross your mind anymore. So, Diana, best of luck to you. I advise you that maybe to get off the cock carousel. But, that's all I really have for you guys tonight. the ridiculousness that this is considered quote unquote reporting is asinine. How is this considered reporting? Now, guys, if you're still listening, I appreciate it. This is my first foray into YouTube, so you'll have to bear with me. We're still kind of new to this whole online media empire thing, but thanks for supporting. And if you're interested to hear more, you should check out the podcast Freedom Uninterrupted on SoundCloud. Got a couple episodes out there. I've been doing about an episode a week. I'm going to try to bump it up to 2, but at least keep a consistent episode a week up. And like I said, keep an eye out for that blog. When it's done, I'll shoot you guys a link. Again, I appreciate it, and everyone have a good night.